Candice Wheeler, Paralegal Advocate for Institute for Black Justice, talks about her life story, including her upbringing in Maryland and her experiences in healthcare.
Um, my name is Candice Wheeler. My pronouns is mom, she, and her. Um, and my zip code that I share is 9409.
Where are you from originally?
I was not born here in Washington. I am not a true born Washingtonian. I was born in the DMV area, which is the DC, Maryland area. I am from Maryland. That is where I was born and raised.
How did you end up in Washington?
We were an Army family, military.
Were there any barriers to healthcare for you or your family growing up? And what was that like, if so?
I want to say not to my recollection. I remember as a child, if I got sick, I went to the doctors. I was in that era of getting chicken pox. So I know that when I got the chicken pox, we had the caramel lotion and the doctor just said, it'll be good. Don't scratch, you'll leave scars. So, um, and I never had a moment in childhood where I knew that I could not be taken care of or heard my family say, oh, this is something we can't do or afford. So that was never, it's not a memory for me. I know that if I was ever sick, I've had, like if I had an earache, I had the medicine that tastes like bubble gum. So, I did not have those issues of lacking any type of medical care.
Were there any other, like maybe home remedies that you grew up with?
Oh, yes. Um, my grandmother, chicken noodle soup. Um, when your stomach was upset, you would always do ginger ale. Ginger ale was a big part of my background and history. Um, there was one remedy to help settle the stomach that we did as a child, and that was warm water and baking soda.
Did your parents or caregivers like discuss health and wellness with you growing up?
I want to say that my grandmother was the one who did more of the appearance type thing. You wash your face. She was very big on that. Very ladylike manner of healthcare. And that's hygiene and how you looked, how you smelled, and how you properly washed. My mother was the same. Um, there was never too much of a talk of too much sugar, too much salt. For one, we were children, so we did not do any of the main. I think anytime we dabbled in Kool-Aid, sugar is when we did Kool-Aid. Um, so it was never like I didn't hear those type of conversations until I was getting older, and then our parents and our grandparents were getting older, where then it was a talk of diabetes and how it was the start of what they could and could not have because of this disease.
Were there any other kind of foods that you eat growing up or have access to? Any kind of foods that your parents or family considered healthy or beneficial?
Where I grew up, we had stores that are no longer around that were smaller grocery store chains for that state or area or East Coast chain. I think one of the things that I grew up here, they call them top ramen. On the East Coast, they call them oodles and noodles. So that was a big factor. So when I first got here, I was like, well, there's different kinds of brands of oodles and noodles. They was like, well, what's that? I said, it's oodles and noodles. And they said, oh, you mean top ramen? I was like, no, oodles and noodles, So, and that's the culture thing of it. Same exact thing, but two different total wording of it. Um, the Chef Boyardee was a big part of my growing up. Healthy, why? I mean, we had the basics. We had the lunch meat. We made more sandwiches back then than I think we do now. When it comes to peanut butter and jelly, ham sandwiches, turkey sandwiches, um, we grew up on fried chicken, baked pork chops, roast. We had a lot of, Sundays it was roast, beef, turkey, those type of things. So there was certain things that you look forward to, fried fish, baked. It was a very known understanding of what our menu was going to be because it was repetition of.
What are some of the things you know about the history of injustices against the health and well-being of the Black community in our state or in the nation, if you want to speak on that level? And how or where did you learn about this?
I want to say it was when I came here and I had my child at Tacoma General, and I I went in and I said, hey, I'm ready to go. You know, it's time. I'm ready to go. And the women, the nurses, I should say, the nurses was not hearing me. I walked in, they were asking a lot of questions. I told them who I was. Um, I went in and they were asking for my ID, and I said, I'm really ready to go. Like, you can have my whole wallet. Just get me on a table, right? So, they still was not hearing me, and I had a nurse tell me they took me to the triage room for labor and delivery, and she said, "Well, here you got to pee in this cup." I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm just being very frank of what she said." I said, "If I do that, this child is going to be in the toilet, so I'm not getting out of the seat until someone take me to the actual room for me to get ready to go." At that point, I was not being heard. You know it became frustrating, um, more than just an experience of giving birth. It became frustrating to where I'm not being heard. Um, I understand that they go through a lot of training and things like that, but I know my body best, right? And one of the things that I kept hearing was, "Is this your first child?" It was the first that that saying where, oh, this is her first kid type thing, she's overreacting and things like that. And I'm like, no, this is not my first child. And I know my body and I need to get to a table. So I they finally took me because the other lady left and another woman came in. She said, "I'm gonna go ahead and take you to the birthing room and then we'll just do everything from there." I said, "Great." So they wheeled me in and they put me right in front of they I'm sitting there. I said, "Could someone help me take off my sweatpants, please? Like, can I get help?" So now I'm not getting any help and any assistance to get onto the bed. So I had another nurse come in to help me with that. My oldest daughter was there to also help me with that as well. And as soon as I get on the table, she goes to Chi, and his head was right there. And then after everything else, because I was there probably a good 20 minutes later, this child was born. And I had that first nurse who I interacted with come in and apologize to me because she was not listening. Um, so that, and then the second time, I think it was my 8th month, I started to run into some complications with my own body and not with my child. I didn't know what was going on. I had a heart rate of 224 while pregnant with this child. I was at TG again, the emergency room, and they was automatically going to send me upstairs and say, "This has nothing to do with the baby. This have everything to do with me and my heart. My heart feel like it's about to run clear across this table." So they sat me down. They kept doing the cuff, and they kept switching them, making sure they wasn't broke or off in numbers. And I finally had a ER doctor come out and say, these things are not broken off. Her heart rate is truly 224. And that's when I went into a crash room. That's why I was learning that they have crash rooms for heart attack. Um, And then that's where I learned that they had to do something with my heart rate being that fast. And they gave me medication that they've never given to a pregnant woman before to throw my heart out of that original rhythm. So they got me stable, but then I had a child and I went through that ordeal with my son. But then after, I had to go back in to start to figure out, why did my heart do what it did in the first place. So after going through all of these tests with the heart doctors, and I guess in a form of words, I failed them all. And that's where I learned that I had congestive heart failure, thickening of the heart. Um, I had uncontrolled high blood pressure. Um, and this was at a time where I was just turning 34 years old. I was like, this is crazy. I went from battling, choking down my prenatal vitamins to going into taking at least 12 to 13 medications all of a sudden to maintain my quality of life. I went into I was driving one day and I had realized that I didn't know what it was, but I swung into Allamore. I was looking for the emergency room. I was lacking oxygen, and then a nurse came out, and I couldn't really say anything because I was using air as I was talking. She just started naming off stuff, and when she said CHF, I gave her a thumbs up, and then nurses and folks came out everywhere. I learned after that I was suffering from pulmonary edema, which is a direct issue with people who have heart issues, which is I have diastolic heart failure. So with that episode, my heart was starting to struggle. All of the fluid that was supposed to be pumped forward went back into my lungs, and that is a form of pulmonary edema. Now, the issue that was not noted in my charts, and I was battling, and that's when we went into the pandemic, to where I was trying to say, hey, it's why isn't this in here? Like, I read through it. Everything that I was going through was a direct understanding, symptom, clear indication of complication with CHF. And it was not properly noted in my paperwork. And it's still not noted that way. And it needs to be noted that way, because if there's forever any reason that I need that documentation, it's not going to state and show what my body has gone through while suffering from my CHF. And I think that is a big problem, that they don't notate our charts properly. I just seen that my notes, I went to the doctor just for a regular physical, and it said that I have passed cosmetic surgery. And I've never had cosmetic surgery a day in my life. So, if you look at things, these things are very detrimental, because if you go in for one thing, they can just automatically assume that this could be something stemming from a cosmetic surgery that I have never had. So those are some of the things that I have been noticing as an adult that has become very frustrating, because when you go in to question these things, they act like you are saying something so detrimental to them that it becomes difficult to get the paperwork switched, because there is no cosmetic surgery at all. There's none. I said, I know what cosmetic surgery is, and there was never no cosmetic surgery. Even with something as simple as getting rid of loose skin, which is sometimes necessary because of the cleanliness and the bacteria that it holds with the loose skin, the foliage of cosmetic surgery, but it is necessary. And that is something that I still have not had at all. There's no breast augmentation. There's no tummy tucks. There's nothing. I have regular general surgery. I've had surgery on my stomach that they cut open the stomach, and I had surgical mesh implanted because there was a hole in my stomach. That is not cosmetic surgery. So these things years back, it said that I was a smoker, and I was like, I never smoked a cigarette a day in my life. So I quickly had to get that rectified because I was like, I'm not a smoker. Those things that I have ran into of being an adult, that has become frustrating. Trying to figure out who to talk to. They give you a runaround. How to rectify those charts. Because they start to look at you like, oh, she just don't want this in her charts, and we just can't just change it like that. Well, somebody put it in there just like that, and this is false information. This is not true information. And I just think as a Black woman, they don't listen to what we need when it comes to our own needs for health, for our concerns. I had, when I started going back and forth with my heart doctor, she was like, well, your CHF is manageable. You can definitely have longevity and things like that. So it becomes confusing. It's like, is this curable or is it not? And it's never a clear understanding. They don't give you a clear understanding. It's just that I'm taking all these medications just to maintain me. But what does it look like when the medications are either too longevity, my body has come acclimated to the medication, or the fact that it's just a struggle to go from taking no type of medication, no type of drugs at all, now looking at a whole dresser full of all these medications that are beta blockers, that are water pill medications, 2 forms of it. You have 3 forms of high blood pressure medication because you have uncontrolled. It's a lot. And then you're looking at your kids and you're like, well, what do I do when I have small children and I'm taking medication that my grandmother was taking? I was alarmed because now what she has gained in her early 60s, mid 60s, I have gained in my mid 20s. So everything that I am dealing with has sped up. So what does that look like for me in my longevity? And when you start to question that, they seemed very, like, well, you take your medicine, you do this and you do that. Just like I'm like, I go in and get my blood pressure checked and it's elevated. Did you take your medicine? Yes. You can't give me no higher of a medicine. You can't give me no other medications. I'm maxed out at that point. So what do I do? Am I dousing my food with salt? No, because I know that there's tell signs where there's too much salt in my system. Your fingers swell. I get red. There's just telltale signs that you just start to go through, once you learn what you have. And, I got kids that I still need to live for. There's no family here at all. They're all clear across the country. So I have to really be on my P's and Q's because no one can get to me faster. And it's just me and my children. So those are some of the disparities that I have seen. And even with my own grandmother, she would tell me, well, I have a doctor's appointment and all they want to do is give me another medication. And I understood her frustration at that point because I had medication. But before then, I was like, well, Grandma, just take your medication because, it'll help. But it wasn't helping. It was just something else that she was taking that after a while, she just started to feel like it was a chore. And there was no other way around her immediate health and her own conversation of what she can do to help remedy her own things in a natural way. And that became difficult because, as older people coming from another generation, medication was something that they did not want to have, unless it was something that was like a diabetic. You just, it was the inevitable of not taking the medication. But when you have to sit there and take medication, you know, when you hear the elders talk about things, they say stuff like, well, you know, she got tired, you know? And when you hear that, it was like she got tired of taking the medication. She got tired of doing it. It plummets fast. There was no other alternative to the medication.
Right.
You know, there was no, I never heard her shin. I never heard her say, no other home remedies. There was never no you know, practice of self-care to where these things would help with certain issues. They don't know anything about Black women, let alone a Black health base, you know. And I said, well, I understand that. And as I got older to understand that, you know, it's easy to give medication and say, here, take this, versus understanding what we need, because we are a precursor to everything out here. You know, we get it hard. We just get it hard. So having an understanding of how our bodies are built for certain things, it's not a one all, you know, fit for everyone. So we have to really understand that. I've had, even with my own daughter, my first child, she has, because it's lifelong, she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and the abbreviation for it is EDS, and it's a connective tissue disorder. So that means her skin tears easily, she bruises easily, and the doctors was like, they had no clue of it, none. I think maybe two people in the medical profession knew of it, and one was a specialist. That I had to go really, now me being younger and dealing with her at a young age, I had to be a big advocate for her, because when she went to go see a regular pediatrician, I had to really school them on how to handle, and so, because she was like a walking piece of glass.
Yeah.
And the older she got, the more unsturdy, because she was prone to dislocations of the hips, large and small joints. And I had one doctor say, well, I understand your concern, but we would have to do it this way. They were giving her stitches. I said, do not give her traditional stitches, because her skin will bubble. She'll have bubbles in between those stitches. So I need you to do a zip tie stitch. And he didn't know that I knew about that. And it's a stitch that starts at one end and it crosses over, and it helps to lay the skin down. And then you tie it off at the other end. And the laceration looks like a straight zipper on the skin. It's better than a butterfly stitch. So, and it did. They realized that they couldn't catch the skin like they needed to until they did the other stitching. But see, that was poking and prodding with my child, when if you listened to me the first time, you wouldn't have to poke and prod and then realize that was not working. So you're giving her more scars and more discomfort when you should have listened to me, because I work with this every day and you do.
With things we kind of talked about, how do you take care of your well-being now? Are there any wellness goals that you have for yourself?
There is definitely some wellness goals that I have for myself. Um, I think I had, not I think I did. I put myself last in my household, and it does have the repercussions. Um, when you are working yourself long hours, dealing with a full household, um, and being responsible for so many different things, you tend to put yourself last. The self-care is pretty much out the door. You're either too tired, you're too burnt out. I think when I started to realize that I needed the self-care is when my body would, and that is where I am, your body being on the go and walking and walking and walking. I remember that my legs hurt so bad for months at a time, and I just could not figure out why. They just hurt. Like I would lay down and my legs would just throb. Like it woke me out of my sleep, and I would just like, something got to give, because I knew at that point something. And then when I started to do certain things to kind of figure out where it was triggering, I took a whole day and I was off my feet, and it lessened the pain in my legs. When I started to sit down more and then stand up, because when I started to sit down during that time, it didn't help, because it was like almost locking my legs. It was just like sitting there. And I was like, well, my legs are not big. I have small legs. And I'm like, so what is the problem? I'm not going to, there's not a lot of weight that is toting around. So what is the issue? And it was because I was putting too much work on my legs. I was coming and going and not really sitting down. Now I sit at a desk, but I'm still up and I'm walking and walking. And then I'm standing up. I'm standing up at home. I'm not sitting down at home. And I was beating my body down. And it was just not good. So I had to learn to rest when I need to rest. Um, and one thing that I realized was self-care. I needed to do self-care by myself. I can't do self-care with other people or with the children still there. It had to be by myself, because it was a moment for me to have quiet time, to reflect, to clear my mind, um, to be well rested and prepared, and to be clear headed for me to continue on either my day or my next day. I had to be conscious that that was a moment for me, um, to do what was needed for myself, to bring my morale back to where it needed to be. And I think that is something that we all lack, um, at one time or another. And it's not selfish. It's not being selfish. You have to take time for yourself. I had to realize that if I am not good for myself.
What are the main challenges you believe are threatening the sustainability of your community's wellness?
I live in a really small neighborhood. Everyone pretty much stays to themselves, but it's still small enough to really know everyone here. As far as outside of my neighbor, my immediate interaction in the community, I think it's kind of like a touch and go. My grandmother, she had passed away recently, and I had did a grievance with HR, and we did it over the phone, and we walked through it, and because I never did a grievance before, and I needed to know how many days did they allot, and everything like that. And I said, okay. So she said, well, let's just go ahead and do it now, and then once we do it, your director will see it. I said, okay, cool, because she wanted to make sure that everything went in fine and smooth, and then I could be ready to go. So we did everything. Made sure that I put everything in the right slots. Made sure that the first half of my leave was titled with the grievance, and then with the remainder, put in the regular leave time for it. Um, so that afternoon, when I was getting ready to send my director an email, he sends me one first, and he said, um, you didn't notify me of you leaving. I said, no, I didn't get a chance to let you know, because she wanted to do this on the phone with me right then and there. And we knew that once that goes through, it'll go directly to you. And he said, I'm sorry for your loss, but I just want to make sure that our students are taken care of while you are gone. So I said, of course, but you do know that the days that I work with my students, the college is closed because we're going to be at another college and it's a mandatory for all of the folks to be there. But since I'm doing my grievance leave, I will not be there. So you don't have to worry about that. And I said, I do have my volunteers that'll come in and then help to assist on that other Thursday, but keeping in mind that the college is closed. So there's not a lot of foot traffic there when the college is closed during this time, as in the quarter is not in session. So the insensitivity of the email to know that he was focused on the students when there's really no student. And it just went on and on about he was asking for things that he never asked for in the email. Like he needed access. He said, well, I need access to the door and I need keys, I need passcodes. And I'm like, where is this coming from? I'm taking leave just like anybody else. And I don't remember anyone having to turn over passcodes and keys. And I said, well, and I had to send him an email back. And I said, well, you don't need keys to the door. If you need to get in, security will definitely let you in. Or you can go to building 1 and get you a whole key fob made. So, I had to let him know the steps to that because I kind of work on, and in that moment, I did not, and so I had to realize when people know that you're always there, when it's time for you to take that moment away, they don't like it. And that was a moment where I did not have the support I should have had when I really truly needed to step away and fly across the country to handle the affairs of my grandmother. So, in that retrospect, when it comes to community, I know it's very direct when it comes to my job, but you have to have some type of understanding that we are human. Life happens, and you cannot just expect someone to, when you set a tone, which you think is a great tone to have, and that is always being there, always making sure you're showing up for everything possible. But when there's something that you just cannot get away from, and it's the inevitable, people tend to still want you there, and they become selfish in that regard. And you have to break that because people will suck you dry with that. Um, and not be supportive of the things that you truly need to be supportive in. Um, so that's just one example of I think that when it comes to organizations that try to help the community, they get focused on very direct subjects of the community and not understanding that there are people that go through personal things that may be new of a matter that no one else have gone through but still need the attention. And I think that's where we drop the ball a lot when it comes to that. Um, and we can do a better job at understanding what others need versus just what the higher ups or people who are popular in the community may need or want done. It needs to be something that we take care of each other and not just something that is pertinent to you, but it may be mediocre to you, but is really big to someone else. And I think that when I've seen that here, it was, you got to get in where you fit in when it shouldn't be that way because we are already, closed off in many different sectors. We shouldn't close each other off when it comes to our own and how we are supposed to be a close knit family of Black individuals that need so much change.
What would you like those outside your community to know about you?
Like I said earlier, I'm originally from Maryland. I started traveling at a very young age. Um, I had my first child at 17. I had my first, well, my only husband at 17. I've been in military installations part of my life. This is the longest place that I've stayed. I came here January 2006. I did divorce from DV. It was very difficult. I have a degree. I study law. I've always studied law. I'm a paralegal. I work at Tacoma Community College. I run the pantry there. I'm also an advisor to the students there, to the clubs. Um, I have been a part of TCC and watching all of the changes, all of the dynamics, watching all of the um, all of the motions of everything since the very end of 2015, early 2016. I work with Institute for Black Justice. I'm the paralegal advocate for them. So I deal with a lot of families who are in our dependency cases or anyone who is dealing with parenting plans. My specialty is parenting plans and contracts. I also dabbled a little bit in forensic pathology. I did that as well. I did not finish that part of it, but I do have some study in that. It's a very, very interesting field, but the college that I was at, they had took away that particular training for it. So I just went full on into law, and I did that. So criminal, family, and contracts is what I studied mostly in my law career. And I'm still going with my law career because there's just so much that's changing now, especially due to the pandemic. So still doing that. I have 3 graduates under my belt as a mother of 7. I have 5 boys and 2 girls. I had my third graduate this year, 2018. I have a daughter that works in healthcare, which she works with dementia patients. I have my second oldest who he works every day and he wants to do the X-ray, wants to be X-ray tech, but he wants to take some time off from school, and that is okay. My third graduate, he starts community college on Monday. And then I have one that is still in high school, middle school, and I have 2 what else? I do work with the Black Collective. I work with our Political Strategies Committee, so I do work with all of our legislation here. I get to sit down and interview them. I get to talk about their plans for the Black community, equity, injust, jobs, money, placement of money when it comes to putting money into our. I also work with the conversation um, that is ran by Dr. Dexter Gordon. I love what I do. I'm passionate about that. I love being able to run and expand the food pantry at the college. Um, Feeding people is just something that was a nature of mine. Um, and I'm hoping to um, work more in the community with serving high school students and having a food pantry dedicated to them. So that is a project that I would love to, see happen in the future. Um, and then other than that, I am taking care of myself and making sure that my health is straight. And not biting off more than I can chew and making sure that I'm not overwhelmed with anything. Because that has a big part of my health. To make sure that what I do is very calm and steady. And I have a different look on life um, since diagnosed. I don't take every day for granted. I wake up and I try to accomplish one thing every day, um, whether it's big or small. If I need to clean the car out, I make sure that today is the day, let's clean it out, right? But I make sure that I don't take my time for granted, um, because I've came to very close calls more than once. And I want to make sure that whatever time I have here, it is meaningful and that I make sure that I scale back so I can have that time with my children because I was diagnosed very young. And I just want to make sure that nothing that I could have done, um, was not just left out. I want to make sure that it got done and that time was well spent. And I don't I don't leave back things that I should have put more time and effort into. So um,
What would you like people to know about, COVID-19, that experience, or other health issues that have affected your community? Just what do you envision as your ideal future? Are you optimistic about that future?
So well, let's go to the COVID part with the community. I know that that was a scary time for everybody. I know that I was diagnosed right before COVID, and I think I never been the scaredest when I had to go to the grocery store, knowing that I was compromised. And I had to feed my children. There was no one else. There was no one else who could do that but me. And I was so paranoid, and my anxiety was off the chart because I was like, did I mask properly? Did I put on my gloves? Then you're like, oh my God, did I touch that? Did I it took over everything. Um I was okay with being at home. I was not cabin fever. I enjoyed it. The kids enjoyed it. We sat out on the porch. We sat on the back. We watched all kinds of old movies. We made it to where we can get through it. Um, but I think as a community, we were so worried and scared that we were even more cut off than before. Um, I think I still have communication over the phone or video, but I think people were just so scared, you know. Um, People didn't want to see their grandparents. People didn't want to go see, they just didn't want to, and it broke their heart. Um, but it was like everyone stayed away. So I think that was one big factor of it, of having to stay away when you want to reach out and hug, when you want to reach out and be like, I have food or I have toilet paper, and people are just nervous to do anything. Um, and then the next part, things that I would like to see going through the pandemic, I hope people realize that we have done things that a lot of people said that we could not do before. And
Mm,
that is working from home.
yep.
Okay. And not just working from home, we were able to conquer and work from home in a professional and proper manner and still withhold company policies, procedures, and confidentiality. Um, I think some of the things going forward that I hope that our policymakers in our community um, would vet for and want to push forward is that when we go into times like that, there needs to be money set aside for folks to help with their family. It needs to be money that is set aside to where we have a system that will take care of the groceries that just automatically get dropped off. Money that is set aside for catastrophicness when there is no jobs to be walking into. Um, and that if we were to ever go back into something like that again, God forbid, that it is something to where we are not forced to go back into the workplace because companies are trying to hold on to their companies and their jobs and things like that, and they're forcing workers to go back in. Um, that they will take a look and understand that, like myself, I am the only one in the household. I am immune compromised, and I have small children that I have to make it to the next day for. So there has to be things that are put in place for me to be able to still withstand my rent, my bills, and to be able to still feed. The actual immediate needs that need to be met and met swiftly when we cannot walk into a building to perform the duties that we once was doing before a catastrophic event. I think that they need to take that into consideration, that human life is more important than making sure that you're meeting a quota or that you're getting back to business and things like that. I think that they have to have these things put in place because you force our community to go back into work, and us as Black people, um, that don't look good for us. Um, you know, we do not handle sickness well, and that's been shown time and time and time again. And even with COVID, something that hit us all hard. And then who was the ones that they say that it was more catastrophic for us. So I think that going forward, I would hope that they would have the understanding, the wherewithal, the sympathy, and just the general factor that, we're dealing with humans here, people with feelings, people with health issues, people that have unique situations. Um, and I understand, and I'm not ignorant to our healthcare providers that have to be in those fields, and they too need remedy. They need the utmost remedy. These nurses can't go back home to their families. They are nurses and doctors that have their families and moms living with them. So what is in place for them? What is in place for the family? The money is not there for them to endure all that. It needs to be more, because there is jobs that you cannot get away from because of the severity of what your field is. So I understand that there are jobs that these people have to get up to and go to, but they are not home. And in that factor, they could not go home because we are working with something that we did not know what did to our family or away. So I hope going forward that we have a community that is educated in these crises and knowing how to work through them. I'm hoping moving forward that we are more prepared to be around each other and not scared in that retrospect, to be able to help, um, to lend a hand when definitely needed, and not be too worried about it. Um, I hope that they have a understanding of the fear of being vaccinated for medical treatment, and that people are not being selfish to themselves or others. It is a true factor. It is a true and natural fear to take something that you know nothing about, and in hopes that it'll help you to be back into society. So I hope that they understand that it is not an ignorance to have or put forth a detriment to our society or community, but it's a fear that they have. And just have some grace and mercy with
Are
that.
there any other messages or notes that you would have for these healthcare institutions in terms of accountability and how we can move forward?
We talked about my oldest daughter who has EDS, and she had fell one night. And this was like towards the end of the COVID, where you can at least have one person in the emergency room with you. And I was there with her, and she had hurt herself. And they asked me who I was, and I told her. And they said, "Well, how old is she?" I said, "Well, she's above age." Um, they said, "Well, she's fine." I said, "I know, but she did request that I be back there with her." And I had a doctor, or her doctor, said that, "Well, you're grown now, you can do this on your own." I know the law, and she requested. So there's factors here. She was able to have one person back there with her. She requested me. I did not go in demanding or asking to go back there. She requested, because I drove up to the hospital. They told her, "Do not reset my leg. You have to do it," because she fell and and they said, she said, "Well, just go get my mom." Now, mind you, she had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome since she was born. And to her, I know what they need for her, you know, and I've never failed her in that regard. So she wants me there because they don't know. So I would be the guide for that. She's in so much pain, she's like, "I need my mom." And because she was 22, they told her, well, you're grown now. You need to do this on your own. You're fine. You don't need your mom. And I've also seen this, and I don't like that, because if I'm requesting, that's like me requesting my oldest child to be with me. And they say, well, no, she can't. Why not? I need someone. That is my right to have support in that realm. And they denied her that. And there was nothing I could do. And I think that they should not do that. They shouldn't. Because that is a patient right. That is a patient comfort. It was not a moment of what she needed. It was more of them displaying their authority of what they could and could not do, what they wanted. It was difficult because she's texting me and saying to me, they're not listening to me. I'm telling them how to maneuver me. I'm telling them how to move me. And this one nurse, she just comes in and grabs my leg. She was like, well, why are you not back here? I said, they're not letting me. So I got to sit here and get text messages from her with my grown child, as they want to call her, saying that they're not listening to her. At least listen to her if you're not going to let anybody in. And they was not doing that. So I think that our policies need to very well state that if requested, by patient, to have that support system next to them, that they are allowed to do so. And that they need to start listening to the patients more, especially our Black patients, because this theory of we tolerate pain more is BS. And I need you to realize that we know our bodies best. And when you have folks that are diagnosed with things that are very rare, you don't deal with patients that have this all the time. You're not experts. You're just coming into it with a fresh new look of it when they've been dealing with it for years. So they need to have more respect for patients that are in that situation.
Can it be your facing?
It's crazy how we hit them with the 3-peat. Got them hits coming soon, no sneak peek.
See the full interview on our YouTube channel at Elevate Black Wellness.